Wake up.
Hi, what is your name and what is your position with WMBK?
My name's Anell Eccleston. My position with MBK is I'm the secretary of the executive committee for the steering committee.
How many years have you been involved with WMBK and how did you first get involved?
I've been on the steering committee for 3 years. I've been in this role for probably close to a year. I first got involved with MBK. I had a student I was working with who was having some issues, a young black boy in the Ypsilanti community, and I was looking for some resources for them. And they told me to go to an MBK breakfast. So I started bringing my young people there for quite some time. And then as I started to progress in my career, I just continued to go on my own.
Very nice. So, in your position, what does your participation with WMBK look like on a daily, weekly, to monthly basis?
More of a weekly basis. I think I look more into like the agendas and uh, kind of trying to make sure those are straight and squared over. If people are looking for information from a meeting, they can reach out to me, and I can provide them with the notes that we have from the meetings. On a monthly basis, it's primarily attending the steering committee meetings, executive committee meetings that happen. Executive committee meetings happen twice a week or twice a month, and then obviously the steering committee meetings happen monthly. So I'm the note taker for all of those meetings. I'm also kind of like a thought partner for a lot of the stuff that happens in the executive committee meeting, which are the things that we typically bring to the steering committee.
All right. Have you always had an interest in this type of community based work? And if not, how has that developed over time?
So I would say I have not always had an interest in community-based work. I think for me, I've always been really attracted to athletics and how athletics can support, young people in various aspects of their life. As a social worker, I've gotten involved in community-based work through my current position or my current organization that I work for. And this is kind of built and built and built into kind of where I'm at today. So this was never really my dream. It was something that kind of was a calling for me, and I started to realize that working with young people in communities, in vulnerable communities, is a calling, and that's kind of where I started going, and here I am.
Perfect. So, you touched on it a little bit in that last answer, but what is your background or work outside of WMBK, and how does that influence the approach to the work you do with WMBK?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm currently the co-executive director for the Student Advocacy Center of Michigan. We're a local nonprofit spanning across Jackson, Washtenaw, and Wayne counties, providing advocacy services for young people that have issues or challenges in their regular schooling. And so we support students with special education, discipline issues. We provide mentoring services and organizing opportunities for youth to get involved. To work for change and advocate for change on a systemic level. And so for me, a lot of the work that I do on the director level is really supporting all the programming, anything from budgets to program development, survey evaluations, resource allocation. The list can go on and on, right? I think for me, it always really comes back to how are we supporting our staff into being the best mentors, advocates, organizers that they can be, right? Because they're the ones that are in the field doing the work. They're the ones that are in the field supporting the kids, and really trying to work for true transformation. I like to think of the work that we do as an organization as generational change work, because not only are we working with just the individual, right? We're working to help them shift their perspective of their own life and their own opportunities that they can receive as they continue to deal through systemic racism, oppression, inequities and policy practices and funding, that can really support them into how can they pour into their children when they have children, right? Develop this sense of resilience in the clients and the kids in the community that we serve, to be able to really engage in solid change work within themselves, but then also within the community too. So a lot for me, is always thinking about how can we create systemic change, but then also how can you think about the individual and they can feel supported in their own transformation as well.
And that's fantastic. Um, how does your work with WMBK fit into your passion and life goal?
I think for me, I'm a uh, I grew up in Muskegon, and so Muskegon is a small town on the west side of the state. It's a very poverty-stricken town, and it's primarily African Americans live in Muskegon, or at least they did when I grew up there. Muskegon has went through a significant gentrification, which has been tough to see for somebody who's been a product of that community for the majority of my life. But also just kind of understanding, kind of the inequities and the policies and the practices that have fueled higher rates of incarceration for teens, Black boys, Black men. How many of my peers, were raised by grannies or aunties, right? Didn't have their dads involved. So for me with MBK, really it fits what I saw growing up every day of my life, right? Through my friends and seeing the fact that they, didn't really have father figures. And so being able to be a part of a program and an organization and an initiative that's really geared towards supporting boys of color to become men of color that are resilient, passionate about seeing things through, being able to see themselves as greater than what the community tells them that they are. Really something that fuels me because in all the work that I've done throughout my career, it's always revolved around helping people tap into their inner self to see how great they really are and what potential they really possess as an individual, as a part of our society and community, and how can we be in relationship with each other through that kind of a lens. I'm also very passionate about ensuring that youth have voice at tables that they're not represented at. That's kind of the foundation of my organization. That's kind of the foundation of how I go about my work in general. And so for me to be able to be part of MBK, where we have youth ambassadors, where we're working with young people and providing, community recognition for them at different events and like those kind of things is really significant because we do know that young people don't have these kind of opportunities in other places in their life. And so when you think about true generational change work, right, the MBK is fully entrenched in that, and that's what kind of brings me to that table or keeps me at this table.
So you touched on it a bit in that last answer, but how would you describe WMBK's purpose and impact to those who are unfamiliar with the organization?
Yeah, WMBK's purpose, is really to serve, you know, uh, boys of color, right? And so, the big portion of my brother's keeper is to be a helping hand to a brother, right, and to a community member, a young person, an older person, right, whoever is like your brother, right? We are all in community together. We are all a part of the community together. And so if we can support each other in this community together, we should be able to see our community thrive. And so part of the purpose of MBK is really to be your brother's keeper and support your brother holistically through challenges and support their personal levels of perseverance and growth along the way. And the impact of that notion really is, again, we're looking to see the transformation in our communities, whether that's through policy practices or funding or initiatives or the individual casework that MBK does in their programming in different schools. It's really about seeing the individual grow and change and transform. If we're thinking about true transformation, true transformative practices, right, MBK is a model for that as they're continuing to provide opportunities that are connected to the young people's interests by supporting them through their social emotional growth on top of just overall socialization as a whole, and bringing that to the community to empower young people, to empower their young people, all right, continuing to lean into that generational change work.
Could you tell me a story about something unique or impactful or some sort of experience that's happened while you've worked at WMBK?
Um, Yeah, I think for me, I've been through various personal various personal tragedies. Recently, probably about 3 years ago, my late wife had passed away from brain cancer.
Mm.
And her and I were married for a little less than a year. And I was not really expecting people to show up and or support me through that. I'm definitely a person that keeps the cards pretty close. And so if I kind of let you in, there's a reason why I'm letting you in. And so I was able to really connect with Jamal on this as I was kind of navigating marriage and then also dealing with somebody with brain cancer. And so eventually she had passed away in February of 23. And so I took some time away from everything in my life. And one thing I remember significantly was one of the first events that I showed up to after she had passed was an MBK breakfast. And I was met there with open arms. I was met there with, a community of brothers that wrapped around me at the time, that supported me at the time, um, that supported me with more than just, hey, how you doing, right? There was monetary support, not with finances, but gift cards for food and meals were delivered to my home. Like it was a very much a very well-rounded community that supported me through a very tough moment in my life. Um, and that's something that I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Could you give me one example of how you made a difference in a young person's life and just kind of tell a story about it? And that can be through WMBK or that could be through some of your work with that you do with the Student Advocacy Center.
Yeah, man. Let me think. I think I always kind of go back to, I had a young person. I won't disclose his name, but him and I, doing my work at the Student Advocacy Center, when I first got hired at SAC, I was a mentor, a Check and Connect mentor. And I had this young person who I worked with him from eighth grade all the way to his graduation. And I remember I didn't really like this kid when I first started with them. He was very into cars, and I couldn't even tell you anything about changing the oil, changing the tire. I couldn't tell you nothing at that time. He kind of duck and dodged me a lot. It was just really hard to really be able to work with him and support him. But he grew on me in a way that I could never have imagined, and I would believe I grew on him in a way that he didn't imagine either. And so we were able to really work together on, when I first started working with him, he really couldn't read. I think when I got him in eighth grade, he was reading at like a first grade level.
Mm,
And writing at a first grade level. And so I would sit with him and we would read magazines on automotives, and he
mm,
would write paragraphs about cars. He taught me how to change my oil. He taught me to change my tire, those kind of things. And so it was truly a story of how I was learning from him as much as he was learning from me. And that's really how I approach the work. If I don't ever go into it thinking I know everything, like I'm a sponge, you're a sponge, we're all sponges, and how can we be a sponge together? Through that work though, he struggled quite a bit in school because of the reading and his writing abilities, and so we just worked diligently at that day after day, time after time. Um, we also supported him and his family with multiple, housing changes, like those kind of things. We also provided him with experiential learning opportunities. We traveled to Minnesota together. We've been to Atlanta together. I think we went to DC together at one point as
mm.
well. And so all of these different moments of working with him and being able to have these different experiences, he was very much like soaked that up, right? I always remember one time, the first plane ride that he had ever been on, we were taking off, and as we were going up, I think we were going to Atlanta at the time. And as we were taking off, I made him sit in the window seat. Of course, he was terrified sitting in the window seat. And he was looking out. He wanted to close the window, and I made him keep it open. And then I said to him, I said, "Man, look out the window." And he said, "Why is everything getting so small?" I said, "Man, that's perspective." I said, "Look at where we're at right now." I said, "Imagine how big your problems really are." in the greater scope of what's
Mm.
happening in the world. I like that's what that looks like. It's called perspective. We hung out while we were in Atlanta. We went to a conference and did a couple things at the conference and whatnot. When we came back, he was like, you know, man, I really want to graduate high school on time, and that's gonna be my goal. And we worked and worked and worked, and he was able to achieve his goal, and he graduated from high school on time. He's engaged at this time. This was 2017 or 2018. At this time, he's now engaged to be married to his high school sweetheart, and they have three beautiful children together. And he has a successful job and is living a life outside of incarceration and all the things. You know, he was a kid that grew up with eight brothers and sisters, and the majority of them have been incarcerated at one point or another in their life. So him being probably the third youngest out of that bunch. For him to be in the position he is in today is really quite remarkable. And so when I think about the generational change, right? I use those words from my experience and what I see through the kids I've served. So yeah,
That's amazing. That's such an amazing story. Well, thank you so much, Nell. Thank you for finding the time, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
sounds good, man.
Fear
Appreciate
is
it.
just a construct of us when confronted with the tough times. Luck is just another side of hope. You get what was on the other side, fronting on another spot. Like Cain to have a brother tying rope. Is it dope or the gram or the ham or the